I tell you what, I wasn't joking, was I, when I said earlier on the news about the David Moyes contract was divisive. Literally people at each other's throats. West Ham fans, 24 hours after a win against Arsenal, at each other's throats online. This whole pro and anti-Moyes thing is so incredibly divisive and so horrible to see West Ham fans sort of at each other, mocking each other, goading each other, pointing a finger. Honestly, sometimes I look at it, I think when we come together and we do things like the food banks and that Facebook group that was built during COVID to help give West Ham fans jobs and keep people in work, and all the fundraising for Isla Kate and all that sort of thing. I think, yeah, do you know what? It's an amazing West Ham family. It really is. When you see what's going on now, it's laughable, honestly. It's point scoring, it's bickering. Not everyone, don't get me wrong. I think we're better off than most on this channel in many respects, because 80% of the people last night were discussing the Arsenal win and the individual players and all that sort of thing. But, oh, wow, it ain't great, let's put it that way. But I was going to say we've had good news for the past 24 hours, but I guess for everyone it hasn't been. But I was talking about the win here, really, against Arsenal. A bit of bad news now, and that's really to do with, well, Mohammed Kudus and Lucas Paqueta, basically. We'll deal with Paqueta. I say it's bad news. It is probably better than I suspected it was when I was doing the build-up show with Charlie. We heard that Lucas Paqueta had broken down in the warm-up, wouldn't feature in the game. So I was sort of really delighted to see him start. We'd heard that it was a knee injury. That wasn't the case. Now it turns out to be a calf injury, which is so much better than the knee for obvious reasons, because one of them is a medical complexity, and the other one, fingers crossed, touch words, I don't want to do that, I'm not even so superstitious, it's just far easier to heal. It's a calf injury. However, the Brazilian himself has said on his Instagram post or whatever it is that it's a calf injury and he's going to need a week to heal. There's a picture of him with his leg up. He's got his foot in one of those casts, but it's meant to be a calf injury. Hey, who am I to know? He's got one of those big plastic boots that you get now if you go to hospital. So he's got one of those. His feet are up. He's reading a book. I don't know about you. I don't think he's reading a book. I don't think anyone's reading a book anymore. Whenever I see anyone posting, they get the book out, right? Here's how it goes. They take the book, right? This is how it goes. They take the book like so. They take the book like that. And they put their feet up and they get their phone and they go, snap, like that. And they post it on their social media. You get what they're saying. They're saying, look at me, I'm reading a book. I don't think they are. I think if they were honestly reading a book, they wouldn't have got their phone out at all. But anyway, Lucas Paqueta, he's pretending to read a book. He's showing maybe he's pretending to have a bad leg. Maybe he will play against Brighton after all. Maybe it's all a ruse. However, if you take him at his word, he was actually reading a book. And he's got a calf injury, he's going to be out for a week. That rules him out of the Brighton game. Also, I don't know why I did the drum roll. Also, some extra bad news for that is that Mohammed Kudus. Now, there was a suspicion or a suggestion, both, that whilst Ghana were obviously going to call him up for the African Cup of Nations, right? He's their superstar. He's going to be one of the best players at the tournament, I would hope. However, there was a suggestion that maybe they'd chuck us a little bit of leeway and allow us to fly him over on a private jet if he could play the Brighton game. It looks that is not the case anymore. And look, it's not up to us. We can't force the issue. It's a matter of great national pride and a great prestige for Kudus himself. And you know what? We've been relying on him a little bit too heavily, I think, at times. So it's a shame that he's going. I could have really done. I say I could have really done with him. We all could have really done with him for the Brighton game, really, couldn't we? Let's be perfectly honest. But he would be a miss on his own. If we're also missing, as it seems, Lucas Paqueta as well, then that ain't quite so good, is it, either? So the pair of them missing, pretty bad news, really. Look, that may both change. Sean did another tweet. So it was obviously Sean Whetstone did the tweet earlier on about the David Moyes' new contract, which I do believe to be the case, by the way. He also tweeted about this Mohammed Kudus thing, but he said, interestingly, this is yet to be confirmed by David Moyes. I don't think we need David Moyes to confirm this. If this is the case, it really is. I really hope that there's some level of... I think we need three things to happen. We need there to be a really good dialogue between the club and the National Association. I think we need there to be a will from, I think, from the Ghanaian FA to be a little bit pliable in this. And I think we probably need Mohammed Kudus himself to put a little bit of pressure on his home association and say, look, please let me play in this one. I reckon if all those things happen, there's a will. There really is. I don't think he'd be frowned upon by his teammates for doing so. I think everybody, sort of knows the situation. We could really do with him against Brighton. Look, we're missing Mikel Antonio. Look, Mikel Antonio wouldn't be playing in the team at the moment anyway. Let's be perfectly honest. But with one attacking player out, he would be playing in the team. I think it's quite clear from anybody that, witnessed... Look, I don't want to be too hard on Saïd Benrahma, but he doesn't seem to be a viable option, and he wants to leave as well. So our impact drops significantly if he's not there. David Moyes isn't going to use Maxwell Cornet. He just isn't, so it's almost pointless even mentioning him. And he's not going to go and get one of the attacking players from the youth team and bring them in. He's just not going to do that. So I think we very much need Mohammed Kudus for this one. With Paqueta being out, where we're going to really struggle. Because what's it mean? Jared Bowen up top on his own. Look, clearly he won't be up top on his own. He's probably have to move to the right wing. You know what's going to happen then, don't you? It's going to mean that David Moyes will probably start Danny Ings up top, and he just can't do it. Look, Brighton, we got a win against Brighton, but I can't quite shake off the fact that Brighton are our bogey team anyway. And whilst we've done well to beat them earlier on in the season, we did need that potent threat on the counter-attack. They still did attack us a lot. It was a good display of counter-attacking football. It wasn't dissimilar to the Arsenal game in many respects, in that sort of, that defensive Moyes ball working really, really well. But for it to work well, you have to have some threat on the counter-attack. With Danny Ings, we don't have a threat on the counter-attack. So I would hope that wouldn't happen. And I can't, even myself, I can't see within the squad because so many of the players are unusable. I feel because they've not been rotated. Benrahma is so out of form. Cornet is so unused. Fornals, you could maybe a combination between the two. I'm not looking at that bench and seeing a viable option that David Moyes will want to use at all. So with that in mind, I do hope there's some solution. Look, the perfect thing would be that Mohammed Kudus flies back late, and then it turns out that actually Lucas Paqueta hasn't really been reading a book. That's not really his boot. That's not really his protected boot at all. He's absolutely fine. He has a massage. He has an ice bath, and he's back and available for the Brighton game. But that would fall earlier than the parameters of his week. You have to be a bit conspiratorial to think otherwise. You have to assume that the club have asked him to put out misinformation. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I think the club are perfectly capable of putting out misinformation themselves, manipulating a player to do it. I think that's something a little different. I'm not sure that would actually happen at all. Anyway, there you go. There it is. That's the sort of bad news. The bad news that followed the good news. Well, some would think good news, bad news, bad news. Some would think good news, bad news, and some would think good news, average news. Bad news? I don't know what it is for you, but whatever it is, please don't fight about it in the chat.